Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. French President Emmanuel Macron's visit to China comes at a critical moment, raising questions about France's role in shaping diplomatic efforts around the war in Ukraine. As talks follow President Zelensky's visit to Paris, where the focus was on France's involvement in emerging peace initiatives. Meanwhile, NATO foreign ministers are meeting in Brussels. Although no consensus has been reached on peace negotiations, nearly 5-hour discussions in Moscow between U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Russian officials were described as constructive. Now, to discuss all these developments, we're now joined by Romain, Managing Director of Euro Creative. Good to be back on TVP World. So let's start with the timing and all this. I mean, President Macron's visit comes without it really sugarcoating it at a crucial time. Given what's happened the last 24 hours, what do you think are his priorities in Beijing?
Well, there are two priorities. The first one is, of course, Ukraine, and to which extent we can put some pressure with China when it comes to its relationship with Russia. And the second is about trade relations, especially the unfair competition that China is pressuring the European economy and the European economies, especially since the comeback of Donald Trump at the White House. So I think that those are the two main priorities. And this visit of President Macron is as much a bilateral visit, as well as trying also to some extent to emphasize a European approach. What we can say on these two different topics is that those are very important discussions that will take place between President Macron and Xi, but at the same time, we should not expect a lot of results from this visit and from these talks.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the past, I mean, Europe has referred to China as a rival, a partner, a competitor. Not quite sure. Different countries stand on different places. Macron has been to China before. I believe this is his 4th state visit there. So in terms of how we deal with China, how France deals with China, given everything that China is required now in terms of that whole peace process, how do we view China? How will France go about it? How will Macron talk with the Chinese in all this?
I think it would be very difficult not to mention China as a rival. And this rivalry will continue in the next few years, in the next few decades. We are on complete different agendas when it comes to geopolitics and when it comes to trade, to industrialization, to economy. On the geopolitical side, we are, whether we like it or not, on different sides. On the one side, you have the Europeans and the West more globally, if we can still talk like this, which are on a status quo. So basically, we are defending the international order. We are defending institutions that try to rule the international order. On China's side, there is a revisionist policy. This is true for Taiwan, but this is true also more globally. China is part of this group of countries which are willing to put an end to the Western domination of the global order. So this is something that is going to stay, and this is why this relationship between Russia and China is strong. It's not perfect, we know that. There are many differences, but it's here to stay. On the economical side, yes, this is also very difficult. On the one side, you have Europeans and the European Union, which is struggling with competitiveness, which is struggling with industry, which is struggling with innovation and technology. And on the other side, China, which has a big surplus when it comes to production. So they are basically flooding the European markets and the European economies with their own product. It can be true with cars. It can be true with other high-level technological products. And in the same time, Europe is extremely dependent on China when it comes to raw materials. So the situation is going to stay. We are not on the same side. And here, it's very difficult to find a path and to find a way for China and Europe to have better relations and not be considered as rivals.
Mm-hmm. Now, President Macron has touted in the past strategic autonomy. He's also been, of course, key in meeting Zelensky recently as well, really trying to be a supporter of Ukraine. Given also what's happened, how much, let's say, sway does Macron have with China in this regard, looking at Russia, also looking at his own influence, not just in Europe, but how much Paris can really influence Washington's decision. But how does Macron, if anything, have any leverage with the Chinese regarding Russia?
Well, let's be honest, not much. And this is not just about France, this is not just about Paris, right? This is about Europeans. We have to reckon and we have to find solutions there because it cannot stay like this. If we want to survive the 21st century, Europe doesn't have much influence when it comes to those so-called peace negotiations between Washington and Moscow and to some extent Kyiv. So there needs to be a solution there. We are not powerful and influential enough. So this is the case for France when it comes to this visit to China. This is the case for France when it comes to negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. This is not enough. And we need to play a more proactive role, but at the same time, we have important limits. We have economic limits, diplomatic limits, political unity limits, and a strength limit also when I would say when it comes to military power. So this is not out of surprise that we are not counting that much on those negotiations on the international scale, but we need to do much more. The risk is that with those kind of visits, and you say that there are not so many, I mean, there is no perfect unity within the European Union and European countries when it comes to China. The bigger risk of this visit is that it could affect the unity of Europeans when it comes to China, which I think is far from perfect. And we saw it with visits, for example, of Prime Minister Sanchez from Spain a few months ago and other leaders, thinking about Orban, Fico. But the risk is that Macron and France are being played with this European strategic autonomy card. European strategic autonomy is very important, but it should not be something that China is able to use to find a specific way to influence Europeans on the international scale as well as on the economic level. So we need to be very conscious about what we can hope for concretely with China when it comes to international relations and how to rebalance our trade relations. But at the same time, we should not be naive thinking that all the problems will be just solved like this just by a visit. So we can gain a little, but we have a lot to risk. So let's be careful about this kind of visits.
Mm-hmm. I want to go more into the European element of what you've said there. And on President Zelensky obviously meeting Macron there recently, also was in Ireland. His presence in Europe again, I mean, how significant is that? Do you sense that through his direct contact with leaders, is there going to be more support coming? I mean, the Europeans are more on the side, very much on the consensus with Ukraine. His personal presence, what do you gauge from the last few days?
Well, we know that Macron is very kind of, is very keen when it comes to personal relationship with leaders, and to some extent it can work, of course. But here again, Europeans have demonstrated that they are supporting Ukraine, that's for sure. But at the same time, that they cannot drive the agenda there. And Zelensky is trying to do as much as possible, diplomatic tours in Europe. Try to be in touch with European leaders, different ones, not always the same. It's not just about, Paris, Berlin, or the United Kingdom, or he's trying to multiply the relationship and try to ensure as much support as possible. But at the same time, there is the visibility. We know that Europe has to propose much more. It's not just about financial military support in the long term. It's also about security guarantees. And we've been talking a lot about the coalition of the willing, but at the end of the day, for the moment, the coalition of willing is especially made to have discussions between chief of staff from different countries of NATO, from Europe, and not just from Europe. But concretely on the ground, there are no security guarantees.
But speaking of that, Romain, I'm going to jump in here. You mentioned a key point there that Europe, I'm quoting you here, must propose much more. You mentioned NATO as well. Let's jump in on that point right now. We have that foreign ministers meeting at Brussels, headquarters of NATO today. Actually, it's just happening at this moment, this doorstop. And one of the main things there, they're going to be discussing this mechanism of PURL. So the long form is the Prioritized Ukraine Requirement List. So that ideally gives NATO allies, I think half of them are on this at the moment, ready to buy weapons in a fund to buy from the United States what Ukraine needs, and then delivering that to Ukraine. So given where we are with that now, where do you see that? How effective is that in holding the line? European unity, what do you make of that meeting today and this mechanism? We just heard a new pledge, 500 million, I believe it was, from Norway just today.
Look, there is no choice. We need unity when it comes to the support of Ukraine. I mean, we should be extremely naive to think that there will be, a peace after those meetings in Moscow and in Washington or in the US. This is not going to happen for the simple reason that Russia is not ready and is not willing to make peace today or tomorrow, in the near future at least. So we need to support Ukraine. There is a need of unity between Europeans and especially within NATO. It is about military delivery, indeed, and if Ukraine, and we know that Ukraine needs some weapons, needs some armament to continue this war, to continue to defend itself, to defend liberty and independence, then we need to find solution. It is better if European money is going to European defense industry, of course, because we are talking about the European money of citizens, and it should be directed to their interest. But if we don't have the capacity to support Ukraine, then we need to find another solution. And if the US weapon is ready to deliver right now, let's use it. So this is my point. Then the second point is to say that it is not enough just to propose a continuation of delivery of weapons. This is crucial, but it is not the only thing that we should propose. This peace negotiation has been, as we saw, initiated by Moscow. We need to be at the initiative, which means that when those negotiations will fail, because they will fail because of Moscow and its willingness to continue the war and to take over Ukraine, then we, Europeans, Westerners, we need to find solutions. We need to propose things on the ground that will help Ukraine to get security guarantees and to have a stronger hand when it comes to potential negotiations in the next few months or years. This is what we are talking about.
All right. So we'll see how that develops during that meeting today. I mean, that's the second day where all of these are gathered. I just want to get one last quick one from you. According to some of the sources that TVP World is getting, apparently one of the discussions on today's meeting at NATO will also be about using Russian frozen assets. In your short mind and quick opinion, what is France's position on this? What is Macron's view in all this?
Well, we know that France has that, but at the same time, we can see that there is a position of France now that is non-vocal about this. We know that the Belgians are against it for personal national interest, fair enough, but we know also that there are some institutions from the European Union which have been vocally opposing this over the past few days, or at least rejecting any responsibility when it comes to those frozen assets. So I think on the French side, there is no opposition. We know that France has not been a driver into allowing this for a number of years, but today France is, in the wagon, if I can say so, and would support any outcome of this for the simple reason also that Paris acknowledges that there is a need of financial support to Ukraine in the long term, especially to support, weapons and military delivery. And today, the situation in France, budgetary-wise, is not perfect. So, those frozen assets could be very crucial, both for supporting Ukraine in the long term and to envisage some Ukraine reconstruction in the near future.
All right, great. So all those latest insights, they're really much appreciated. Romain, Quiniou, they're always a pleasure having you here on TVP World. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good day.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here. There's much more coming up on TVP World. Goodbye.